great to see all of you. I want to start out by saying a few thank yous, and particularly to our IT team and Silas Cruz, who's ensuring that this meeting is actually streamed live via our city website as well as YouTube. I think it's really important as a city. We want to continue to see transparency and access to the city so that individuals didn't just have to come and pay to attend this State of the City presentation. So we're really happy to be streaming this presentation this afternoon, and just want to thank everyone for that technical support. I want to thank Jess Straits, our communications coordinator, who put so much effort into making this presentation successful. And at this time, I want to make sure to recognize our city council members that are here. And I'm going to start with Latricia Suggs, who is here and in the room today. Latricia, thank you very much for being here today. This is her first ability to actually attend in person the State of the City. Amy Miller is also here today, and Drew Schwab, and Brendan Meyer. So we have quite a few senior leadership team members here, but I'm not going to take the time to introduce everyone today. I want to just share that I'm really excited about what I get to talk about this afternoon, and I think it's really important to reflect back both today as well as the past 25 years, because we are at a quarter of a century right now relative to Port Angeles. And I think it's so important that as we think about this community, it's important we reflect back on the past, because that is the only way we are going to be inspired by our past achievements to ensure that we see enhancements and progress moving forward as a community. So I'm really looking forward to highlighting where we were back in 2000, as well as where we are today. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, as well as some of our 2024 accomplishments, and certainly some of our new plans and big projects moving forward as a city. So I came across this picture of downtown that's approximately from 2005, and thinking back to that time, we were still thinking about what's happening in downtown. What are going to be the anchors? And I can tell you one of the things that was a major concept back then that had multiple attempts was trying to see a conference center in our downtown on the Oak Street property. We were also looking at the multimodal gateway facility. There were big plans for that development. But when you look at this map, there's a whole lot has changed since the time this map was created. And I think what is also important is you could do a similar map across the board at the city, whether it's Peninsula College, whether it's Civic Field. Across the board, the amount of changes and really positive improvements and progress for this community, it's astounding. So just looking at a little bit of progress along the way, we saw the implementation of the Esplanade and the Pebble Beach Park, really big deals. And ultimately, we saw the implementation of a conference center here, Field Hall, which is a major anchor to our waterfront district. I think it's really important that we value the investments that were made there by this community. This community made that project happen. And it's an example that we can do this again, we can do something similar, and I'm going to talk about one of those projects that we want to focus on next in a little bit. So the time frame in the last 25 years has not been without its challenges, and I think it's important to recognize those challenges, but what I care about today is highlighting some of those many big milestones that are very positive. And significantly, I want to talk about Dream Playground's original inception in 2002. We saw the Elwha Canoe Journey hosted here in 2005. And guess what? We get to see that happen again this coming July. Elwha is going to host the canoe journey here in Port Angeles. We had Blackball Ferry celebrate 50 years, and the Elwha Dam removal began in 2011. And certainly celebrating the Port Angeles Sesquicentennial was a really big deal at the time. We saw the Esplanade implemented. We also saw a number of other projects and efforts completed, including the Straight Shot, including the new Winter Ice Village that the Chamber put together. So valuable to have that vibrancy in our downtown, and to see the shuttle established to Hurricane Ridge, and then finally the open of Field Hall. Just a lot of excitement about what this community has achieved in those 25 years. So looking back in 2000, I think you'll recognize quite a few people on City Council back in 2000. I know that most of us probably know at least one individual on there. We still have Lauren Erickson working very hard as a local judge. But it's important to see who is leading the city at that time. And then I also want to talk about who's leading the city today. So this is your current City Council, and I can say confidently about each one of these council members. You can look at their faces and you can tell they care about every single one of our community members here in Port Angeles. They're dedicated to serving, they're dedicated to doing the right thing for all of you from a policy and legislative perspective, and also looking ahead into the future about how we can make Port Angeles a better place. Looking back, population-wise, we've seen 8% growth. We've seen an 86% growth in median household income. We've seen total residential units grow by about 9.6%, with even more that have been accumulated since 2020. We've seen a 170% increase in the average home sale price, which is a major issue for the city of Port Angeles and one of the reasons why we are so focused on housing. And we've seen Port Angeles become a destination with lodging tax revenue growing over 633%. I want to think too strategically about where we've been and where we're going. And from a housing perspective, it is so important that we are efficient with our limited land base. So if you look back in 2004, what you could develop on a single family lot, you could do one house effectively. In 2017, we updated that to 2 units. And today, you can do 6 units on 1 lot. Why is that a big deal? Because the burden of the utility costs within this community are then shared by a greater number of people. It's important that we continue the effort of density. It also helps us ensure that that housing is affordable and that we're paying less for the ultimate land underlying that housing. Looking back in 2000, we had quite a few less new residential units coming into play, only about 14 at that time. And I'm very proud of the city organization who has permitted over 95 units in this last year. That's a big deal, a really big change. So I'm going to take the time to highlight some of the good accomplishments in 2024. I'm going to start though talking a little bit about our revenues. I think it's important to share our revenues are quite stable at the City of Port Angeles. We saw a little bit of growth in our largest revenue source, which is property tax. We saw sales tax go down a little bit. We saw permit revenue, because of all the activity, grow substantially, 155% increase. But we've seen some good consistency relative to strong revenue numbers at the City of Port Angeles, and that has enabled us to provide the services that we provide today. I think it's important to share with that largest revenue source, when you look at a $10 bill, the City of Port Angeles only receives about $1.60 of that $10 bill at the end of the day relative to property tax. So I think that's an important metric that is often misunderstood relative to local taxes. So we have at the city, and part of our financial stewardship is having an award-winning team in our finance department. In 2024, this team won the GFOA award for the 2024 budget relative to just great work on that budget itself. They have been successful also in obtaining a $400,000+ commerce grant that directly was attributed to assisting with over 2,200 city utility accounts in Port Angeles. They also were effective in balancing our 2025 budget of about $156 million for the year 2025. So the finance department and many others work on our capital facilities plan. That plan looks 6 years ahead. What are those capital needs we have for the next 6 years? And right now we have over 187 million in new investments that are necessary for the capital facilities plan, and about 53 million of those need to be for transportation specifically. So I want to drill down a little bit in what was our last strategic plan. And our last strategic plan, in my opinion, was very effectively implemented. There is no issue of critical importance that wasn't well implemented at the end of the day. And housing and homelessness was one of those issues of critical importance. So looking at those accomplishments, one of the major ones completed in December was the implementation of Senate Bill 5290, which effectively implemented permitting timeframes and procedures that were required at the state level and required of local governments, passed through to us as requirements. The city of Port Angeles was the first out the door to implement those, doing an outstanding job. And what it does is it really values the fact that time is money when it comes to the development community. It ensures that we have measurable outcomes at the end of the day and that we're following those time frames when it comes to permitting. And again, as I mentioned before, the new housing programs that have been implemented have resulted in over 95 dwelling unit permits for our community. But there's many other housing incentives that have been developed. And if you look at them in detail, we have grant opportunities for affordable housing funds, including House Bill 1406 and 1590. So far, we've awarded over $819,000 in those grants directed at those housing units. Additionally, we've awarded over $11,000 grants towards infrastructure from the Neighborhood Improvement Community Enhancement Grant Program. We've also waived over $365,000 in permit fees dedicated to those new housing units. I think that's a huge deal to see how meaningful that fee waiver is to the ability for a developer to move forward a housing project. We've also seen 16 dwelling units actually request our pre-approved housing plans and put those to use. And we've seen 4 approved multifamily tax exemptions, which exempt an individual from property tax for a series of years, depending on what level of affordability they provide from a housing perspective. So commercial district enhancement was another issue of critical importance in that prior plan. And just a few examples of some of the projects we saw. This is one I'm very happy about, because I can tell you in the Big Spring spruce up, my family's job and my job had been to clean out those tree wells. And you could not lift those grates on many of our street trees. So it's so cool to see the new street trees in, that you can lift those grills and actually have some healthier trees implemented throughout our downtown, also benefiting our local sidewalks so that we don't have root growth into the sidewalks themselves. We also saw the repairs for the City Pier Tower. That was a big deal to ensure that tower is structurally capable of the enjoyment that all of us desire when we're down for concerts on the pier and other events in the downtown area. We can celebrate a new partnership with the Port Angeles Waterfront District. And this is a partnership we're really excited about, because I will say there has been a gap there that has now been filled by the Waterfront District stepping up to ensure, one, we retain and regain Main Street program designation. That's really important for the quality of our downtown area, but also ensure that we're there and we have an entity dedicated to supporting our downtown businesses, and ensuring also that we have many promotional events that really grow the activity within the downtown area in support of our downtown businesses. And of course, they are also working on aesthetic improvements for our downtown. So I want to talk about the next issue of critical importance next, and that really is about capacity. And we've come a long way relative to new capacity improvements at the city. making sure that we have the staff capable to implement those tasks and work plan items that we want to see implemented at the end of the day. So looking at our police department, we continue to see over 22,000 calls annually to our police department. That's a huge number of calls considering our limited police force, but that number continues to be a big one to manage. The fire department too is over 6,000 calls on an annual basis, and they've seen a 4% growth since last year in 2023. Calls per firefighter have also increased by 4.5%. And that's a big deal, and I think it's also resulted in us investing some resources in the fire department that I'm going to talk about in just a second. We've been working on increasing staffing levels, and the police department has finally achieved full staffing, which is a big deal. If you look at jurisdictions around this state, so many of them have difficulty filling the local police force, and they're having to go out of their way to create special measures to recruit new officers. We are very fortunate to have the dedication of the police officers that we have, as well as the longevity of so many of those officers that really are here because they care about this community and they're invested in this community. Similarly, we've made a great deal of progress in the recruitment efforts that you've seen around town relative to Peninsula Communications, our 911 communications. We've seen 2 communication officers hired in 2024, as well as 5 additional hired in the year 2025. So we've implemented community-oriented policing, and I think this really matters because it's a way of ensuring that our police department is actually engaged in the different activities around town. The school resource officer, for example, is always there getting to know the students, really plugged in. And each of these officers have a different role. We have a dedicated downtown officer, Zach Moore, who's been holding coffees with cops and a number of other events where he's presented to talk about the efforts he makes in the downtown area. We have a dedicated outreach officer and a dedicated code enforcement officer. But I think this community-oriented policing is really the way to go and really a great path for the future of our community. I mentioned that we've got new resources and programs in the fire department, and this couldn't be more important considering the growth of the calls that we're seeing in that area. One of the ones that I'm very excited about is the new officer development program that we have. That is going to go a long way to help with adequate succession within the department, ensuring everyone can get the training that they desire and need, as well as equip them for promotional opportunities. Additionally, we have started a new day car unit, which ensures that during those peak daytime hours for calls, there's backup coverage for the officers or the fire officers who may have been up all night. The fire department was able to obtain a grant to hire 2 additional community EMTs, and also they continue to invest in paramedic training for the entire team. So we've made a new investment that is really the rebuilding or restoring of a fire inspection position that we used to have. And this individual focuses on the safer environments for our local businesses, for multifamily residences, for transient living facilities, as well as educational institutions, ensuring proactively there are no fire situations because he is able to go around and do a series of inspections in advance. I think it's a proactive way for prevention, and it's a really important tool that we now have available to us. Our community paramedicine program continues to be one that we are extremely proud of. They direct medical outreach to unsheltered populations, ensuring individuals with limited healthcare access receive essential services. We've seen over 1,900 encounters at this point. We've seen 545 referrals to the community paramedicine program and 382 unique patients served. That's a really big deal, and I think a metric that's really important to all of us is 73 overdose response referrals, because we are seeing progress relative to the overdose statistics that have plagued our community for some time. We've seen our police department and fire department join forces for Operation Shielding Hope. This is a really big deal to see them coming together. It's really focused on reducing opioid-related emergencies and giving the opportunity to also address co-occurring substance abuse issues or disorders, as well as mental health concerns. Really important way to go, and this is also funded entirely through settlement funding from the opioid drug providers. So I'm going to talk next about high-performing relationships, and I think it's so important to share with all of you. The city cannot do any of this alone. We are so grateful to the entire community for effectively making things happen throughout Port Angeles, and this is a really big deal. So I want to talk about one of the individuals here in the room, and Paul Forrest, who's here with us today. So you may have heard me talk about Paul before, but he took it upon himself to do trial growth of the trees on the city's street tree list and propagate those plants himself so that at the end of the day, the city can provide free street trees for the public right-of-way. And he successfully did that. This past year, we saw through the second annual City Shade event, 177 free trees given away and planted in our community. That's huge. That's really a major change to the aesthetic of Port Angeles, to just the overall community feeling of being able to come together and make a project happen. We're really grateful to Paul for initiating that effort. I think it's important to share that we had a significant winter event in 2024. And this is one where we had partners coming from Peninsula Behavioral Health, the REAL team, the Rediscovery Program, paramedicine. All those partners came together and said, we are not going to let a single person be out in the cold during this event that dipped down in the teens and single digits for days. We ensured anyone who wanted shelter or housing during that time had it, and they had access to it. That's a big deal, but we couldn't have done it without those partners involved and those partners engaging with us in our incident command approach. So a partnership that continues to grow that I'm extremely proud of and happy about. Chief Sharp has been working very well with Chief Patterson at District 2. And that is shown and demonstrated through multiple interlocal agreements. But the most recent one is not the most recent one, but probably one of the biggest lifts is the duty chief interlocal agreement. This ensures these chiefs get to take some vacation and they cover for one another. It's a really amazing partnership opportunity, and particularly when you have events like we did last weekend, you have multiple issues occurring throughout the county. People get stretched thin to different locations, and you need coverage that covers all those areas. So I'm really excited about the growth and the amazing relationship that we see between Fire District 2 and Port Angeles Fire. I'm also extremely excited to talk about the Northview apartment complex, and really couldn't be more grateful to Peninsula Behavioral Health for the hard work that they put into this project. Also want to say an exceptional thank you to Clallam County for stepping up and recognizing that by funding this jointly as local governments, we can do more. And certainly City Council for also putting in funds for this project. But most significantly, Windy Sis' ability to implement housing is unsurpassed. And we're extremely happy to see 36 new residential units developed in a multifamily format in Port Angeles because of her hard work. So this next one is a really fun one for me, because one of the individuals that I care greatly about the relationship I have with him is Paul Jarkowitz at the Port of Port Angeles. He is always out looking for opportunities for partnership. And as we have seen continued wildland fires in urban jurisdictions throughout California, Hawaii, and other locations, it is imperative that we switch up equipment needs throughout our community to make sure that we are prepared. One of the things we have been looking for is a Wildlands fire engine. Paul Jarkowitz was able to help us obtain that. We found one on the GSA register, but you have to have a substantial amount of paperwork to get there. And fortunately, Paul already had that paperwork done. He was able to purchase that truck for us. We reimbursed him for it, but major step in the way of partnership, as well as getting that below value. It was on the register for $10,000. He was able to get it for $7,500. So looking to the future, I think this is something that's so important for us to be talking about, and that's the future. And how do we get to the future? We plan for it. And we're doing exactly that. So to start with, you'll see here a pyramid of different plans. And I know sometimes they may feel confusing, but I want to explain them real quick. The foundational plan for the city of Port Angeles is our comprehensive plan. And I know many of you have already been plugged in to that process, which is going on right now. But that comprehensive plan is the 20-year vision for our community. The next tier up is the City Council strategic plan, which is a 2-year planning exercise. It's City Council saying, here is the strategy that we want our community and our city to proceed with over the next 2 years, and staff, you need to go implement it. And so the work plan, which is the top level plan on this tier, is the actual implementation, the plan that we as staff put together and actually implement. So that's what I'm going to be talking about next, is a joint approach relative to the council strategic plan and the overall work plan for implementing these next new goals. So the first goal, which is a strategic focus area in the plan, is community resilience. And community resilience, as you all can imagine, is extremely important for Port Angeles to proactively think about. One of the projects that we have in the works that's almost complete is the senior center and fire hall, updating them with battery backups, as well as backup with solar power on those buildings. We've been able to do this through grants. For this particular project, we saw over $350,000 in grants from the state of Washington for the solar component, as well as another $450,000 from the federal government, by the way, already received to help pay for that project. And then we're also going to be implementing a health and wellness project in our Parks and Recreation Department. We're going to be working with a number of other activity-based organizations throughout the community to ensure that we're promoting wellness throughout our community. We think that's a really important way to ensure there is good health throughout the community. We also have enterprise resource planning, which we often refer to as our ERP system. This is really about internal resiliency at the city, but it also will have implications for all of you in a good way in the form of customer service. So the ERP system is our financial enterprise platform at the city. It is an enormous lift, and it's why it's necessary is it's been years. 2003 was the last time we saw a change to that platform. And so it's a really big deal to see that implemented in a new way that will allow for better online bill pay for utilities, better budgeting, a whole number of other steps. And I'll talk a little bit more about how it might also impact permitting. So a step up, a major step up from Coffee with a Cop is creating a national night out. And this is really about an event that ensures we continue to build relationships with the Port Angeles Police Department and the community itself. The National Night Out is something that you do see in other communities, bigger step, bigger event, and we're looking forward to putting that on for the first time in Q3 of 2025. In this picture, you see that we constantly get really good participation from other area departments, including Lower Elwha Police Department and the Sheriff's Office, and we're really grateful for those good partnerships. So city resource optimization is another strategic focus area, really important to City Council, and we've been actively working on that. Looking at some of the grants that will go into that optimization are 29 different active public works grants valued at over $35 million. We have our fire department currently managing over $2.4 million in grants, and we have community and economic development managing over 2.7 in grants. And I'm not even mentioning our other departments, including finance, parks, and others. This just made this slide that much simpler, but believe me, there's a lot of other grants. The point here is we need to optimize the oversight of those grant opportunities. And this is, in the picture, you see our engineering team. On that team, we have a new grant administrator. And part of this is ensuring that we're going to be providing quarterly updates to council on all of the different grant programs we have in every department of the city. So this next slide is really about our financial health. And I think it's a slide, if you look at the top right of the diagram, you'll see the slide that I've referred to in past presentations as the mountain of debt. And at one point, we had over 110 million in debt. And that's not a good place to be. If you looked at our debt service that we were having to pay on an annual basis, it was very disturbing. We are now down to the point where we have less than 30 million in debt at the City of Port Angeles. And very significant is the fact this will be the first full year that we have no general fund debt, which I'm very excited to say, and that's a really good place to be. So getting back to housing, we have a number of significant permitting improvements. One of my favorites is the Super Tuesdays with Triston, which is a newly implemented over-the-counter permitting opportunity where you can come in and get a minor building permit in the same day. This program only started in January. We've already approved 60 permits since January of this year, over-the-counter, same day, as part of the Super Tuesday approach. We've also made an effort to co-locate our Public Works Department staff members so that you can come to one stop at the city front counter downstairs at City Hall, and you will have Public Works representatives and Community and Economic Development representatives in the same place. There will also be major steps, again with the same enterprise system, a plug-in for the permitting and licensing software. This is essential for transparency in the permitting process. So this will enable all of you as customers to actively check in online and see the status of your permit. Instead of having to come to City Hall, instead of having to call, see an email, you will actually be able to pull that up online. We're targeting this for a November implementation. This is a big lift, a big deal, but also extremely important to the transparency and effectiveness of the permitting process. And most importantly, we're measuring this. We're making sure that we're measuring and keeping track of how we do and what our performance looks like when it comes to permitting. So the comprehensive plan update, again, thank you to all of you who participated in the multiple public meeting opportunities that have taken place so far. We continue to be very excited about this plan. Expect to have a major community workshop in June of this year, as well as other opportunities for engagement. I think it's extremely important all of us participate and help set the vision for the next 20 years of the Port Angeles community. We're expecting this project to be completed in December of 2025. A little bit more on housing. So many of you may remember we did a housing action plan in 2019, and it has not been updated since that time, but I will tell you the completion of it and the implementation of it, if you look back at the 2019 plan, almost all of those metrics were implemented by City Council and city staff. And that's a big lift relative to housing. but we're going to be working on the next plan, getting that also done by December 2025, and that next plan will look out another 10 years on our housing needs. Looking at the progression of housing growth through the lens of permitting, in 2022, we saw 43 new housing units established in permitted in Port Angeles. We saw 66 in 2023 and 95 in 2024. That is a really good trajectory, looking at our local housing need, ensuring that we continue to see that move forward. And I think part of the reason why is the different incentives that we've seen our city council invest in and approve. So I want to emphasize we are here to support you with all of these incentives. They are available to you. And by the way, you have this brochure on your table, which talks about all of the different incentives. But those include free permit-ready plan sets, and we are working on additional plan sets for those who may want to see some other options. We also have continued the program of multifamily property tax exemptions, affordable housing sales tax grants, and infrastructure grants through the Neighborhood Improvement Community Enhancement Program, also known as NICE funding. And then the permit fee waiver, again, has been a really big step in the right direction to ensure projects can pencil out at the end of the day. So next I'm going to talk about infrastructure, development, maintenance, and connectivity, another strategic focus area. And a major project that we have going on there is the A Street capacity improvement, which really looks at capacity in the west end of town. And I want to start by expressing gratitude to Clallam County for contributing opportunity funds directed at this project, recognizing how important having that sewer capacity is for multiple locations. This will accommodate over 1,400 residential units, 10 acres of neighborhood commercial property, and 57 acres of industrial property. Really important to see this project implemented and successful, and we are committed to it at the city. Another project that you see going on today is the 8th Street project, which is 8th Street Paving. This project is really designed to further the multimodal investments that we've had, ensuring that we have bike lanes in corridors and primary arterials throughout the city. This investment will also ensure we have ADA access throughout the 8th Street corridor all the way from Lincoln Street to A Street. That paving is going on now. We really appreciate your patience with it, but it's a big deal. And we also listened to all of you who participated in the community survey approach to this. We heard you loud and clear that parking in this corridor was extremely important, and we've retained over 90% of the parking spaces in that corridor based on the community input that we received. We continue to build on the Ray Street project. We're designing phase 2 of this, which basically will carry forward all the way down to the Olympic Discovery Trail, connecting the Discovery Trail to the National Park Service through this really important recreational corridor. This is provided as part of the RAISE grant, which is Puget Sound to the Pacific, that is helpful and administered for multiple jurisdictions throughout the peninsula. So I get to talk a little bit about what's going on in the community, and this again is all of you making things happen. And this next slide I think is really cool, and that is the certificate of occupancies that we saw once again over the last year. And what this says to me is we have a community dedicated to entrepreneurship. We have a community willing to step out and try out a new business opportunity. And probably my favorite part of this is you can look at jurisdictions across the state. You're not going to find a jurisdiction that only has one retail chain and all the certificates of occupancy. I think that's really cool. It illustrates we are unique, we have diversity, and we have people that are extremely creative when it comes to new business opportunities. So working together, we continue to really be excited about the job fair that's taking place tomorrow. Thank you, Mark. We are also excited to have the Big Spring Spruce Up on May 3rd. And the Welcoming Vista Work Party project. This is one that we've seen a lot of investment on. Thank you if you volunteered for that. But we've actually created a 10-year plan to implement along the bluff system good natural vegetation planning, and at the same time recognize the importance of the local views. It's a really good balancing act relative to the plan that was developed, and we have volunteers out there putting it together at the end of the day, which is so cool. So this is that next project that I wanted to talk about relative to our support as a community. The Faro Marine Life Center working towards the Marine Discovery Center. I think it is critically important that we continue to foster support of this project. It is the next step on the Port Angeles Waterfront Center campus. It's a big deal, and I don't think that our community should sit back and accept the fact that funds may be taken away from this project. We need, as a community, to continue to fight for this project and ensure that this project successfully moves forward. This next one is, again, one where I'm asking all of you to step up. This cleanup has gone on far too long. We need to see substantial progress. We need to see more expedient progress on this. One thing that we have been told is there will be a public comment period on the interim cleanup action plan for Rayonier coming in May of this year. Now, important to one, push for that time frame to be held to. Two, to ensure that when it comes forward, we put in our comments and we make our voice heard. This is the last public comment opportunity for the Rayonier cleanup, according to Department of Ecology. And we need to get it right. We need to ensure that we're not going to see large amounts of contamination left on this particular site moving forward into the future. So this is absolutely my favorite part of the presentation, and it really is about how we're fostering partnerships in the community as well as connections. And we're fostering those in ways that those partnerships and connections are going beyond the Port Angeles community. They're actually broadening not to the national level and international level, and you've got to love it. It's so exciting to see events like this. Huge thank you to the Chamber and Sam Grello at the Waterfront District for making this event happen, to recognize the Coho's first voyage back to Port Angeles. The way our community embraced the travelers on the Coho is just amazing and just so special, I will say to myself. This is one where I will tell you the mayor and I were very disappointed, and Councilmember Suggs were disappointed too, that we were in Olympia at this time, so we could not actively be at the event. But what is special to me, I heard from my in-laws who live in Ontario, Canada. They saw this and Port Angeles welcoming Canadians on the national news in Canada. Huge deal and really special relative to what we have done as a community, and thank you to all of you who were out there in support of this event. So this is the Shop with a Hero event, and I want to thank members of the Lower Elwha Police Department and our police department who organized the Shop with a Hero event. This was a major game changer for the holidays of so many children within our community. Really amazing to see everybody come out and support the local kids. Another opportunity that we take on a regular basis is engaging our local youth in learning about city infrastructure and the way that our different departments and divisions function. We took the opportunity to stretch out when Snohomish County had major power outages, thousands of customers out. Our light operations team went out there and actually helped restore the power. Big deal, and we hope that that favor is returned when it comes to our need here locally in Port Angeles. I had the opportunity last year, as well as a few of us had the opportunity to participate in Ian's Ride, the Sea to Sound event. And that was really special to learn about how critically important it is to see the transitions along the trail, how difficult it can be crossing roadways and other areas when you're in a wheelchair. Really special event, and we had a council member even show up to perform for that event. So we also had Rob and Lucy Edwards at Stevens Middle School help ensure that we had a Mutsu City sister city visit this year. And that was a really special event where we had Mutsu City students actually come and make a presentation to City Council. Really cool and appreciative of the hard work that they put in to make that happen. I cannot not mention the new build of the Dream Playground. I think all of you helped participate in that, and I'm just so grateful for the community coming together to once again put that into play for the third time. So I'm going to pause here for a second because I think this is really one of the most important parts of my challenge as well as my messaging that I want to share today. So this is Mayor Dexter. She spent last week and she met with a delegation, including Mayor Alto from Victoria, as well as a number of other legislators from Canada for National Women's Day. And a really big step in the direction of embracing our friends across the water in Canada. I think that couldn't be more important at this time. And what it says to me is we as a community have the power to create success through our different connections that we make, our different partnerships. We have the power to create amazing improvements in relationships. We have the power to rise above national politics no matter what's going on. So my ask of you is to embrace your Canadian friends and neighbors, to also take the time to embrace those that are working for the National Park Service, National Marine or Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, those whose federal workers' jobs are challenged right now. We know they are our neighbors. We want to support them in every way that we can throughout these challenging times. I think that also needs to go for our nonprofits that so critically rely on federal funding, as well as our local tribes that so critically rely on federal funding. So let's step it up and make sure that we're helping and supporting all of them. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
mentioned a couple of times cooperation with the county. One project that requires that is the relocation of the Emergency Operations Center. And I know it has seen funding challenges and challenges of slightly different views between county and city and how to move ahead. I'm wondering if you could comment on that. And while we are on earthquake resilience, I'm also concerned about our fire stations, which are not all up to current earthquake standards. I'm wondering if there's any plan to look at that and any opportunities to bring them up to standards so they remain standing after the big one.
Thank you, Kai. So on the joint public safety facility, that's actually moving in a really good direction. I will tell you, there were numerous slides that we had here. I cannot possibly talk about all the different city projects and things going on, but the joint public safety facility is one that is really important to us in partnership with the county. That project is in a much better place today. In fact, we have substantially reduced the cost of that project, as we have all seen the cost of development throughout Washington State and beyond has grown extensively. And that resulted in the costs being very high for that project itself. We had to reduce, and we successfully did so, almost $10 million to the cost of that project, which puts it in a very good place, as well as we are anticipating a May work session jointly with the county and the city to look at the 65% design of that project. So it is moving in a forward direction. Happy to report that. As far as the fire stations, I don't know if Chief Sharp has any more detail or information on that, but I'd be happy to talk to you more about that and learn about the details that you have.
Regarding the comment period for the Rayonier cleanup, will city post something on their website when that comes up, perhaps with a link, and maybe even put it in alerts, in the alerts?
We'd be happy to do that, absolutely, yeah.
That was my question too, about how to actually follow through on those emails, because I think that it's not.
Something else in mind.
Well, it's not really clear, how to support, so that'd be great to work it into the communications. But there was a second thing you said we need support on from the community, and I did not write it down.
The Marine Discovery Center.
Marine Discovery Center.
Yes.
So how exactly to support on that?
Yeah, I think we'd be willing to post some details on our website about how to better support that, as well as on your first question. Help me go back to your first question again.
Oh, it was related to her about how to support the Rayonier cleanup.
Right. Oh, I was going to share that Department of Ecology does allow you to sign up for notices on and updates for that project, just as the city does on our website for updates on different projects. Norma?
What percentage of the city budget is federal funding that may or may not be in there?
So I would say that it is a relatively small portion of the $156 million budget. We are monitoring that closely, and Norma, there's an exact city council memo that I could provide to you that actually lays out, here's all the federal funded applications and grants that we rely on. But I think we're in a pretty good place. I think most of those projects were already under contract and moving forward in a very good way. There's probably one or two that we're going to continue to focus on and ensure that that funding is coming forward. Yep.
I got one. About 8 months ago, McKinley announced the closure. I wonder if you can speak to the high-level impact that has on the city's financial profile.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, Mark. I think what our position has been all along, we care the most about our community members who have been impacted by that. And whatever we can do to help them, such as tomorrow's job fair, we want to do it and make sure that we're supporting them. From a financial perspective, yes, there's a small impact relative to utility tax, but for the most part, their predominant utility usage is through the electric utility, which is passed through Bonneville Power Administration. So we don't see a major hit from that particular component, nor is there a significant revenue amount from a water utility perspective.
Hi, I have a question about National Night Out. Is there a contact person or someone already planning that? I was involved in that previously when I lived in Oak Harbor on the Island, so I'd be real interested in figuring out how to help with that.
That would be great. Thank you so much. And Chief Smith, who's raising his hand right over here, he would love to talk to you about that.
Okay, I think it's 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Thank you so much.